Hello folks, I'm Alex, this is Alex Unabridged, and these are my top 10 favourite reads of 2024. So welcome back to the channel if that is the case. Yes, it's that time of year, isn't it? We all do our top 10s. I do enjoy this time of the year. It's been a very difficult top 10 to put together this year. I've had a phenomenal reading year. And so there was, quite a few that that were vying for a spot on this list. But this is where I've come down for now. These are my favourite reading experiences. So these aren't necessarily all the ones with the highest scores in my rating system, because that works a little differently. But these are definitely ones that had a very high enjoyment factor within that rating system. But yeah, these are just my favourite reading experiences. I won't go into a huge amount of detail on plot and what they're about and all that kind of stuff in this list, because we'll be here for a while if I did that. But I do have reviews of pretty much all of these out on the channel already from the last year. So if there's anything you like the sound of and want to learn more about, then do feel free to go and have a little search through my back catalogue, as I say, where you will find more extensive reviews of these. Okay, so let's jump in at number 10 then, with a bit of Stephen King, with Holly. I read this back in January or February. And yeah, this is a great crime thriller. I love Holly Gibney. She's my favourite King character. And so, there was always going to be a good chance that I was going to love this one. But I really, really like the villains in this. They are really horrible, quite disturbing in what they're doing. But there's a dark humour to to the way they're written as well, certainly their dialogue, which I really enjoyed. As I say, I love Holly Gibney, so I enjoyed Holly's stuff in this and learning more about Holly and Holly's evolution. But there are also some great sort of subplots in this as well. There's a fantastic one between Barbara Robinson, who's a recurring character, and an old poet called Olivia. And the conversations between Barbara and Olivia kind of stole the show to some extent. I thought they were absolutely brilliant. So yeah, a fantastic Stephen King crime thriller. Another great Holly Gibney book in at number 10. Number 9 then is The Body Snatchers by Jack Finney. One of my reads for my science fiction reading project this year. Yeah, loved this. Absolutely loved this. I thought I'd enjoy it, but I didn't realise quite how much I'd enjoy it. It is brilliantly paced, I think, and it's got a slow tension, an undertone of tension that runs throughout it, right from beginning to end. Never sure how it's going to go, what's going to happen. Will our characters kind of come out on top, essentially? And speaking of characters, it's got a great ensemble, sort of key ensemble of characters, and the protagonist Miles, I think, is great. I think the sort of portrayal of sort of small town life is really good as well. And yeah, it's intriguing, it's mysterious, as I say, it's tense. It grabbed me and never let go till the end. I ripped through this. Yeah, really, really good, fun book with lots of really interesting questions in it as well. It's definitely one that made me think. Number 8 then is Alien: The Cold Forge by Alex White. I've read a few Alien tie-ins and novelizations, but this is by far and away the best that I've read. Yeah, this one was really atmospheric, great character work, particularly with Dorian, who is the villain essentially in this. And wow, is he a nasty piece of work. He's my new favourite villain because he is just horrible. I mean, he's horrible from the start, but as it progresses and you realise quite how psychopathic he is. Yeah, he's quite a disturbing character, and that's what I loved about it. I think the aliens are always going to be scary. They're always a fear factor in any kind of alien book, film, game, whatever. But the real terror in this is Dorian, and I think that was like done so well. by White. But the rest of the characters, you know, it's a small ensemble piece again, and it worked really well with all of those characters and the setting. Very tense. I never knew exactly where this was gonna go in terms of the end, who was gonna survive, who was gonna win the day, if you like. It was never a foregone conclusion that the good guys would win. Everybody's flawed in this anyway. But yeah, brilliant, tense, pacey, mysterious, action-packed reading experience. Yeah, fantastic. Loved it. In at number 7 then, we've got To Be Taught If Fortunate by Becky Chambers. I'm a fan of Becky Chambers' work anyway. This is another great sort of example of what I love about her writing. It's kind of a really sort of considered, contemplative story where her philosophy is so gently kind of introduced and talked about through her characters, through the setting, that it's just a joy to read. She makes me think without trying to smack me with big questions. There's just a real kind of, say, gentle kind of approach to things. Her characters are great. They're likable. They are kind of a found family in this. This group of, this is about a crew who is traveling around a particular area of space, a particular system of planets, and scientifically observing the planets with a very much a leave no trace kind of approach. I think the joys of discovery kind of come across, and also the isolation of space as well. Certainly is kind of explored in terms of what that does to sort of the mental health of the crew. There's a lot in there, but as I say, it's never feels like unmanageable or anything like that. It's just I find her stuff really relaxing to read, because it challenges me to think of some things without, as I say, like really giving me some questions that are gonna like melt my brain. Yeah, I really liked that one a lot, and I will definitely go back and reread that when I get myself a copy of my own. I had that at the library, but I've been kind of like feeling I want to dip back into it. There were certain sections where I was like, oh yeah, I need to take note of that, stuff like that. So yeah, I'll definitely reread that at some point. Very short book, but plenty in it. Okay, in at number 6 then, we've got Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke. This was the first Clarke that I'd ever read. This was back in February, I think. Yeah, this is one where there is a big question to smack you in the face, especially at the end of it. I mean, I loved it from beginning to end. I think Clarke's sense of humour and quite down-to-earth style makes some of the sort of more discombobulating elements of what he's talking about very accessible. It feels very grounded, I think, his stuff, even though he's often asking some pretty big questions. The characters in this were entertaining, were interesting. There's quite a lot going on. But it was the final act, really, the final part, where there's some really big philosophical questions being asked that really did kind of make me go, what? And they stuck with me, and I think that's, one reason why I loved it so much is the kind of sort of philosophizing that I was inspired to do by the questions that Clarke was asking stuck with me for months after reading this. The whole book has really, really stuck with me very strongly in my mind. And yeah, it's one that I'll definitely go back and reread. And it was definitely one that really made me want to read loads more Clarke as well. Okay, in at number 5 then, we've got City of Last Chances by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This one could have possibly gone in even higher, but I am aware of that could be recency bias if I did that, because I only finished this at the beginning of December. So I'll stick at number 5 for now. Yeah, this is urban fantasy from Adrian Tchaikovsky, and I was shocked at how much I loved this, because I'm generally not a fantasy fan. But the fantasy elements in this, the magic, the monsters, etc., they are a layer of the world building more than anything else. They are not the focus of it. The focus is really about society and about a rebellion against authoritarian oppressive forces, occupying forces. But the way that Tchaikovsky builds this world is brilliant. The city itself is very much like the main character in a lot of respects. All of the other characters, and it's multi POV to the max. All the other characters come together throughout it and become really, I think, relatable, knowable characters. They fit within the city. There's a great balance between a darkness in the writing and humour, dark humour and slightly absurd humour. There's a lot of mystery and intrigue to it. I found myself very connected to the environment and the characters. And I can't wait to get onto the second book in the series, even though I know it's set in a completely different place, and I think we only potentially see one of our returning characters. But it was just, yeah, it was such a fantastic experience, and it was a buddy read experience, which I think did heighten it even more. I would have loved this if I had just read it on my own, but buddy reading this with Lekden from Reading from the Depths and having that chance to discuss it, and we both loved it. So, that definitely heightened the reading experience for me. But as I say, I would have loved that anyway. It's just a fantastic book. Okay, number 4 then is a bit more Becky Chambers with A Prayer for the Crown Shy. This is the second in the Monk and Robot duology, of course. The first being A Psalm for the Wild Built, which was my number 1 book of last year. And if do you know what? I think I might even like this more than that one. And that goes to show you what an amazing year it has been for me this year, and the fact that this is number 4 and not number 1. But yeah, this is just more of the same great hug in a book, gentle philosophy, lovely characters, a really lovely utopian vision for what the world could be if we just based all of our systems on being kind to one another and fair. Very much utopian. And based around kind of, treating the natural world well as well, taking care of the world in terms of ecology, etc. I love these characters, and it was great to return to them and get back into this world again and learn more about the society, more about their sort of systems, like their economic systems, things like that. It's all done really gently with humour and a lot of kindness. There's a lot of positivity in this around difference, things like that. Just another like warm, relaxing read that had that kind of gentle ability to just make me think. Okay, we're into the top 3 then. So in at number 3 is The Terror by Dan Simmons. One of the longest books I read this year. It's nearly 1,000 pages, and I read this over 3 months, and that was a really good way to tackle it, actually, just to take it a little bit at a time. A few pages per day is pretty much what I did with it. But this never felt slow at any point, I have to say. It is long, and it does go into a lot of detail. Simmons is quite wordy as a writer, but it works really well. His style, his sentence structure, the structure of the whole book works brilliantly, I think. And the thing I loved about this the most was that whilst you've got the supernatural stuff coming in, the real terror in this, the horror in this, is the environment and the fact that there are these 2 ships with their crews stuck in the ice, the Arctic ice. In the 19th century, it's Arctic exploration. And, it's the horrors that they endure as the crews, whether that's, the constant threat of mutiny, the fact that food is running short, illness is striking them down. Are they ever going to get out of this place? Plus, then you've got this supernatural terror coming in on top. The environment itself, of the Arctic is, it's beautiful, but it's incredibly threatening. And the way that he describes the different sorts of ice forms, things like that, the sort of the exploration side of things, the survival elements of it, I absolutely loved. The characters in it are brilliant. They are deeply flawed, and they're not likable, a lot of them. Certainly not to start with, but by the time you get to the end, I think you do feel You can find the good in a lot of them where there is good. um, but yeah, really, really great historical fiction, horror fiction. Yeah, really interesting book, and definitely has made me want to read more Dan Simmons for sure. So yeah, The Terror, absolutely cracking read. Okay, down to the final two then. I have gone backwards and forwards with these several times. And in some respects, these could almost be tied because they are two very, very different books that I love for very different reasons. So this is kind of where I put them in for the moment. But as I say, these could almost be tied as number one. The first one, then, I've put in at number two for now, is Lanny by Max Porter. This is such a gorgeous piece of writing. So it's somewhat experimental in its form, but it works so well. You've got kind of sections where the text kind of just walks, it kind of flows across the page in strange ways, and when you read it, you understand why. Um, but yeah, it's got kind of folkloric elements to it, some folk horror to it. It's sort of conversations between, say, two people, or even just monologues, but it's very short scenes almost. It's kind of it's got a darkness to it which I really enjoyed. There's almost some horror elements in there. Um, you've got some surreal stuff coming in the final part of it. It's different in each of its three parts. Um, it's got this fantastic kind of chorus of the villagers that works almost like a Greek chorus. I can see this as a stage or as a play, not necessarily even on stage, but as a promenade kind of performance. I can see this making a play, a performed version. Absolutely amazing. I think you could do something brilliant with it. Um, but I love it just as a book. It can quite happily stay just as a book. It's just my mind and my theatrical background go, oh my god, this would be amazing as a performance piece. Um, but yeah, it's just one of those magical reading experiences that I didn't expect. I mean, I read it in two sittings. I could have done it in one, but I started it late in the evening and didn't want to spoil it by reading it when I was getting too tired. But I've recommended this to like pretty much everyone ever since. I badgered my wife into reading it, and she did, and she loved it. So she went off and read all the other Max Porters then. But yeah, just a really stunning piece of writing. I think there's something really magical about Max Porter's kind of creative style and just mind as well. I think he's a real talent. He's got real talent. So yeah, so at number two then, Lanny, absolutely brilliant. So number one then, my favourite read of the year, uh, Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. Um, yeah, this is what got me started on Adrian Tchaikovsky. Really, I'd put off reading this for a while because I wasn't sure it was going to be for me. How wrong was I? Yeah, this is absolutely brilliant. This is just one of those kind of first read experiences which I won't forget. I absolutely ripped through this. Once I started, that was it. I just wanted to listen to it every single moment I had. Fortunately, I could. I was painting this room at the time, and so I had plenty of time to stick an audiobook on and listen, and it got me through my painting. But just the way that Tchaikovsky writes, generally speaking, I love. But in this, the way that he writes the spiders, we follow the evolution of these spiders, not just biological evolution, but the evolution of their society and their civilization. The way he connects us to the spider characters, I think, is brilliant. For me, it never lost any kind of pace on it. It was really well paced, going backwards and forwards between what's happening with the spiders and the human characters that we also meet in this. There's a brilliant amount of humour in there. It's dry humour again, Tchaikovsky's usual dry humour with elements of the absurd in it. Um, and there's a weight to his writing. His style is great. I love his vocabulary. I love the way that he structures his sentences. the words he picks, things like that. There's a rhythm to his writing that I really really enjoy, especially in this. Um, yeah, it's just there's the science level is just pitched right. You know, there's he doesn't hold your hand with stuff, but he makes it accessible. He doesn't dumb down, but he makes it understandable. Any of the hard science that's in there. And certainly the social science, I think that's where he's absolutely brilliant, is on sort of the social science side of the science fiction with any of his stuff. But again, that comes through here massively. So what really made me want to read more of his stuff. So yeah, I read that and then immediately jumped into Children of Ruin, and I read Children of Memory a couple of months later. And it's a fantastic trilogy. It's my new favourite trilogy for the moment. But Children of Time is streets ahead of the other two. The other two are great, fantastic books, but Children of Time is something special. And I will absolutely be rereading that again. When I've read all of Adrian Tchaikovsky's other books, I will immediately return to Children of Time and start again. So yeah, Children of Time, absolutely brilliant, but very different to Lanny, you see. So it's like it's really difficult for me to actually decisively say that one or the other of those is my favourite read of the year, because they were very different experiences, but both of them were like phenomenal experiences, like some of my favourite reading experiences ever. So it's really difficult to really place those. So there we go. Those are my top 10 favourite reading experiences of 2024. Fingers crossed that 2025 can compete with that, because 2024 is going to be a hard act to follow. But I have faith. I have a lot more great stuff already in my kind of reading projects for next year. So fingers crossed. But yes, that'll do from me today. Thank you very much for watching, folks. As always, do drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do let me know if any of my top 10 make your top 10 this year. Or if there's anything that I've mentioned that you haven't read that you're thinking, oh, yep, ought to get on that. Do let me know if I've inspired you to pick any of these up. I'll be back on Friday with a tag video, so I do hope you'll join me for that then. If you're celebrating Christmas, then have a very Merry Christmas and have a wonderful day on Wednesday. But from me, for now, that's ta-ra.